Let's be honest. Being a woman today comes with expectations stacked like books, career, family, health, beauty, emotional labor, and somehow still smiling through it all. But the truth, mastery doesn't start with perfection. It starts with small, repeated choices, habits. This isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters. Daily, deliberately, and with the quiet kind of strength that doesn't shout, shifts the entire room. Here are 10 habits every woman should master, not to impress the world, but to stay rooted in who she truly is. Now, let's get into it. The first few moments of your day matter more than you think. They're not just transitions from sleep to wake. They're transitions from unconscious to intentional, from automatic to aware. And most people don't even notice how quickly they trade peace for panic. You open your eyes and your brain is already sprinting. What time is it? What did I forget? What's waiting for me? There's a rush to get up, a flood of notifications, and a mental to-do list that starts screaming before your feet even hit the floor. But here's the shift. What if you didn't start with pressure? What if you chose presence first? Waking up doesn't have to mean running. It can mean arriving. You don't have to check your phone before you check in with yourself. You don't have to scroll before you breathe. There's something powerful about resisting the noise in the name of peace. That means taking 60 seconds to just sit at the edge of your bed, breathing deep, feeling the air in your lungs, giving yourself permission to pause, not because you earned it, but because you're worth it. The world will always ask for more, but the question is, will you give it before you've given something to yourself? That early quiet moment isn't wasted time. It's foundation. And when you rush past it, the day owns you. But when you lean into it, you own the day. There's a big difference between waking up and actually waking into your life. Presence is about attention, not multitasking your emotions, not faking calm while your mind races through stress, but really being where your feet are. The truth is, pressure makes you reactive. Presence makes you intentional, and that difference shows up in everything. Your tone, your choices, your boundaries. It shows up in how you drive, how you speak to your partner, how you handle that tough email. It shows up in how you show up. Some people think slowing down means being weak or lazy, but that's because they confuse motion with momentum. It's easy to be busy and still feel empty. But being present, that's power without noise. It's control without force. When you walk into a room from a place of groundedness, you don't have to demand respect. You carry it. And people feel it before you speak. There's no perfect formula. Maybe it's a prayer. Maybe it's a stretch. Maybe it's standing in front of the mirror and not critiquing your face, but actually meeting your own eyes and saying, you're safe, you're good, you're ready. And maybe, for once, you don't rush to become someone for the world. You just return to yourself. There's a quiet strength in a woman who knows her boundaries and doesn't shrink when others try to cross them. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just clear. It's not about putting up walls. It's about knowing where you end and someone else begins. It's about creating a space where your peace doesn't have to constantly negotiate with other people's chaos. And the truth is, that kind of clarity often makes people uncomfortable, especially the ones who benefited when you didn't have any lines drawn. When you set boundaries, you're not being mean. You're being honest about what honors you. But the problem is, many women are taught to soften everything they say, to make every no sound like a maybe, to smile through discomfort, to shrink their needs into something polite. And somewhere along the way, you start believing that taking up less space will keep the peace. That saying, I can't, means you're selfish. That speaking up makes you difficult. But boundaries don't make you difficult. They make you free. They give you room to breathe, to choose, to protect the parts of yourself you've spent years building. The right people don't get offended by your limits. They respect them because they know you're not performing. You're not overextending. You're not saying yes out of fear of being disliked. You're saying yes when it's real and no when it's necessary. You don't have to apologize for protecting your mental health. You don't have to feel guilty for choosing rest over obligation. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they're used to having it. Some people will call your boundaries a betrayal, but that's only because they mistook your silence for permission. They assumed your availability meant ownership. And now that you've chosen clarity over compliance, they don't know how to respond. It's not your job to make them comfortable with your growth. Your job is to be true to the version of you that no longer tolerates emotional overdraft. Because that's what it is when you're constantly showing up for others at the expense of yourself. An overdraft. And over time, it drains you. Not all at once, but in tiny, invisible ways. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've been exhausted for years, but called it normal. You've been accommodating pain and labeling it strength. You've been avoiding conflict and calling it love. Boundaries disrupt that cycle. They teach people how to treat you without you having to beg for it. They're not about shutting people out. They're about making sure you don't keep letting people in who were never meant to sit that close. And it starts small, deciding not to answer that call that always leaves you drained. Saying no to the event you only go to out of guilt. Turning down the favor that stretches you past your limits. Letting the silence be awkward instead of filling it with explanations you don't owe. You don't have to over-explain a healthy decision. You don't need 10 reasons to protect your peace. One is enough because you matter. Because your time matters. Because your energy is not up for auction every time someone asks. And that truth, that calm, rooted truth, isn't something you scream. It's something you live, with every line you draw, with every moment you choose alignment over approval. There's a voice inside every woman that speaks louder than any compliment, any validation, any applause she might receive, and that voice is her own. The words you say to yourself when no one else is around carry more weight than the ones said in rooms filled with praise. Because it's easy to fake confidence in public. It's easy to smile when people are watching. But it's what you whisper to yourself in quiet moments that defines how you walk through the world. Too many women spend years building others up while tearing themselves down. You comfort your friend when she doubts her worth, but then you stare in the mirror and pick apart your own reflection. You encourage your loved ones to be kind to themselves, to rest, to take breaks, to stop pushing so hard. But when it comes to you, suddenly the standard shifts. Suddenly you feel guilty for needing space, for not being productive enough, for being human. But here's the truth, your inner dialogue is not background noise. It shapes your beliefs. It shapes your posture. It shapes what you allow and what you chase. And if that voice is always criticizing, always second-guessing, always rushing to remind you what you lack, it becomes impossible to stand fully in who you are. You don't need a perfect body to speak to yourself with love. You don't need to have it all figured out to say, I'm doing my best today, and that's enough. Kindness to yourself should never be a reward. It should be a rhythm. The way you talk to yourself sets the tone for everything else. If your inner voice is compassionate, it becomes easier to take risks because you know failure won't lead to self-punishment. If your inner voice is gentle, you create a life where peace isn't something you earn by achieving. It's something you live in because you've finally decided to treat yourself like someone worthy of softness. It's not about toxic positivity. You don't have to lie to yourself when things are hard, but you also don't have to turn every challenge into a reason to shame yourself. There's a difference between accountability and self-abuse. And too many women confuse being hard on themselves with being strong. But true strength is rooted in compassion. True growth comes from truth spoken in love, not fear. Think about how often your inner monologue repeats other people's doubts. That teacher who said you weren't creative, that relationship that made you feel like you were too much or not enough. That childhood pattern where love had to be earned. Those messages get stored, and before you realize it, they become your own voice. And once that happens, it's not just about what they said anymore. It's about what you keep saying long after they're gone. But here's the good news. That voice can be retrained. And it doesn't take shouting, it takes presence. It takes interrupting the moment when you hear, "I'm not good enough," and gently replacing it with, "I'm still learning, and that's okay." It takes recognizing the thought, "I should have done more today," and replacing it with, "I did what I could, and I honor that." You wouldn't speak to your best friend the way you speak to yourself. So why not extend that same dignity inward? You don't have to become someone new to speak kindly to yourself. You just have to remember who you were before the world convinced you otherwise. Before expectations piled on top of your joy. Before perfectionism silenced your creativity. Before comparison drowned out your self-trust. That version of you is still there, waiting for your voice to sound like safety again. Waiting for you to choose words that build instead of break. Words that don't rush. Words that forgive. Words that free. Your body isn't a project. It's not something to fix, hide, or constantly critique. It's the place you live, the place you feel, breathe, and move through this life. And yet, for so many women, the relationship with their body is more punishment than partnership. Movement becomes something you do to shrink, to burn, to erase. You're taught that sweating should come with shame, that exercise is only valid if it changes the way you look. And in that mindset, the body becomes a battleground instead of a home. But what if you moved your body not to force it into submission, but to reconnect with it? Not to fix it, but to listen to it. Not to look different, but to feel more like yourself. Movement, at its core, is freedom. It's one of the most natural expressions of being alive. When you dance, stretch, walk, lift, flow, your body isn't doing something extra. It's doing what it was made to do. The shame that often comes with that is not innate. It was taught. And you don't have to keep carrying it. Moving your body with intention isn't about being in the gym for 2 hours or pushing past exhaustion to prove a point. It's about presence. It's about tuning in rather than zoning out. There's a difference between moving to punish yourself for what you ate and moving to celebrate the fact that you're still here, that your lungs still work, that your legs still carry you, that your heart still beats with rhythm and strength, even after all it's endured. There's something sacred about the way a woman reclaims her relationship with movement. When she stops asking the scale for permission to feel good. When she chooses workouts that feel like peace, not punishment. When she realizes that moving her body doesn't have to be about changing it. It can be about coming home to it. Because your body isn't the enemy. It's the witness. It's held your joy. It's carried your sorrow. It's stored the weight of your silence and the fire of your growth. And every stretch, every breath, every step is a way of saying, I still honor you. I still trust you. Some days that movement will look like a run. Other days it will look like a slow walk or a few deep breaths on your mat, or even just standing in the shower and rolling your shoulders back, reminding your nervous system that safety is here. It doesn't need to be intense to be effective. It just needs to be yours. Chosen, not forced. Aligned, not anxious. Joyful, not rigid. So much of what women are taught about movement comes with urgency. Change this. Burn that. Tighten here. Lose there. And you can't ignore how often those messages are rooted in fear. Fear of not being wanted. Fear of aging. Fear of not measuring up. But what if movement became a declaration instead of a reaction? A declaration that says, I am here. I am capable. I am not living at war with myself anymore. You begin to notice your strength in subtle ways. The way your back feels after stretching. The way your mood shifts after a short walk in the sun. The way your breath deepens when you give yourself permission to slow down. These aren't dramatic before and after photos. These are internal victories. The ones that build a new baseline. The ones that no one claps for, But that changed the way you carry yourself in every room you enter. And slowly, your body starts to feel like an ally again. You don't rush through the moment. You feel it. You move not because you hate where you are, but because you love who you're becoming. You start to trust the signals your body sends you, instead of overriding them for the sake of productivity. You begin to see movement not as a transaction, but as a relationship. One that's built on listening, on honoring, on gratitude. Time isn't just something you spend, it's something you shape. And yet, so often, women are told to treat it like it's endless for everyone else but limited for themselves. Your time is interrupted, borrowed, expected, taken, sometimes without permission, sometimes with a smile and a thank you you didn't mean. Somewhere along the way, busy became a badge of honor, and saying yes became a measure of worth. You fill your schedule until there's no margin left, and then you wonder why you feel like a shell of yourself by the end of the day. But here's the thing about time. It's not just about what you do. It's about what you give your energy to. And not everything deserves it. Not every request is a responsibility. Not every invitation is an opportunity. You get to decide how much of yourself you pour into something. And if you don't learn to value your time like it's currency, other people will spend it like it's free. You don't owe your presence to everyone who asks for it. You don't have to stretch yourself thin to prove that you care. Caring doesn't mean sacrificing your sanity. Compassion doesn't mean self-abandonment. There's a balance between being available and being accessible, and that difference is called boundaries. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you stop confusing exhaustion with effectiveness. Owning your time means recognizing that every minute you give away is a choice, and every choice shapes your peace. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to be everything. You don't need to attend every gathering, answer every call, or be on demand like a machine. You're allowed to protect your focus. You're allowed to choose rest without guilt. You're allowed to make space in your life for what replenishes you, not just what's expected of you. And sometimes that means saying no. Not because you're rude, but because you're responsible. Responsible for your well-being. Responsible for your healing. Responsible for the energy it takes to show up fully when it actually matters. And saying no doesn't mean you're rejecting people. It means you're prioritizing alignment. It means you understand that just because something is urgent doesn't mean it's important. That just because someone else is panicking doesn't mean you have to match their pace. You begin to learn that time is your most honest mirror. It reflects what you value, what you tolerate, and what you believe about yourself. If you're always available to everyone else, but rarely available to your own needs, that's not kindness. It's disconnection, and you can't pour from that place forever. Eventually, your body keeps the score. Your mood shifts. Your burnout speaks louder than your calendar. So you start checking in with yourself before saying yes. You pause. You ask, do I have the capacity for this right now? You remind yourself that being constantly needed isn't the same as being truly loved. That true connection doesn't demand your time. It respects it. That your time is not a resource people are entitled to. It's a gift you get to choose how and when to give. And gradually, you begin to live differently. You begin to build a schedule that reflects who you are, not who the world pressures you to be. You stop filling your days just to feel accomplished. You start filling them with what feels aligned, what feels nourishing, what feels real. You trade urgency for presence. You stop wearing burnout like a trophy. You start viewing quiet time as an act of power, not laziness. You realize that when you protect your time, you're not being selfish. You're being self-aware. And that's where everything begins to shift, not just in your schedule, but in your spirit. Not just in how you manage your day, but in how you honor your life. There's a quiet, underrated power in being selective with what you consume. Not just what you eat, but what you watch, what you listen to, what you scroll past at midnight when your guard is down and your mind is tired. The content you allow into your life doesn't just pass through, it plants things, ideas, comparisons, beliefs. And slowly, sometimes without even noticing, it starts to shape how you see yourself, how you feel about your life, how you measure your worth. You can't keep feeding your mind with chaos and expect peace to grow. You can't bathe in constant noise and wonder why your soul feels restless. There's a direct connection between the content you absorb and the state of your emotional landscape. What you consume creates your inner climate. It decides the tone of your thoughts, the pace of your breath, the pressure you put on your shoulders. Every image, every story, every comment, every headline, it's all data, and if you don't filter it, it will overwhelm you. Being mindful of your input isn't about pretending the world is perfect. It's about not letting everything in the world have a front row seat to your mind. It's about protecting the emotional real estate that your peace lives on. Because not all noise is harmless. Some of it triggers your insecurities. Some of it activates fear. Some of it pulls you into loops of comparison, judgment, or doubt before you even realize you're spiraling. And social media is one of the biggest culprits. It moves fast. It's designed to keep you scrolling, keep you checking, keep you comparing. It convinces you that everyone else is ahead, that you're not doing enough, that your progress doesn't count because it doesn't look flashy. And if you're not careful, you start living for the image instead of the impact. You start chasing attention instead of alignment. You start curating instead of connecting. But the real power, it's in the pause, in stepping back long enough to ask, does this serve me or does this drain me? It's in unfollowing the accounts that trigger insecurity. It's in muting the noise that feels like pressure. It's in recognizing when a piece of content keeps you informed versus when it keeps you afraid. There's a difference between being aware and being overwhelmed. One empowers you, the other paralyzes you. Music, too, holds influence. What you play when you're alone sets the tone for your emotions. If you constantly pump yourself full of heartbreak, rage, or despair without balancing it with hope, calm, or truth, it shifts the frequency you live in. Your emotional body absorbs rhythm, tone, and repetition. So you have to ask, are you fueling your healing, or are you reinforcing your pain? Even the conversations you entertain matter. Some people feed your mind. Others just feed your doubts. You don't have to stay in dialogue that leaves you anxious, defensive, or small. You get to protect your peace from opinions that were never rooted in care to begin with. You get to walk away from gossip, from toxic commentary, from circles that speak more about others than they ever do about growth. This kind of mindfulness isn't loud. It's not dramatic. No one's clapping for it. But it's the stuff that builds a stable foundation. It's what helps you sleep better, breathe deeper, feel lighter. It's what gives you enough internal clarity to make real decisions, not reactive ones. Because when your mind is filled with static, you can't hear your own wisdom. You can't feel your own intuition. You lose sight of what's yours and what's just noise you picked up along the way. And that's what makes this a habit. Choosing daily to filter, to guard, to curate. Not because you're trying to control everything, but because you're learning to control your intake. You're not ignoring reality. You're just being intentional about what parts of it get a seat at your table. And in doing so, you start to feel the shift. Not all at once, but in small, powerful ways. Your nervous system relaxes, your self-talk softens, your creativity returns, your joy stops asking for permission. There's something profoundly grounding about having a routine, not a rigid checklist that leaves no room to breathe, but a personal rhythm that brings structure to the chaos and quiet to the mental clutter. A routine isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about creating space in your day that anchors you, especially when everything else feels uncertain or unstable. And for many women, life can feel like a constant pull in 100 directions. Work, relationships, family, expectations, comparisons, emotions. There's always something asking for your attention. A routine gives you a moment to reclaim some of it. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to wake up at 4 a.m. or do yoga at sunrise on a mountain. It can be small, simple, intentional. A routine that begins with a few deep breaths before reaching for your phone, a stretch, a glass of water, a handwritten thought. Something that signals to your nervous system that you are safe, present, and in control of how your day begins. Because how you start your day often shapes how you show up in it. And if you start already behind, already anxious, already reacting, you spend the rest of the day trying to catch up with yourself. A routine is not about productivity. It's about protection. Protecting your peace, protecting your clarity, protecting your energy from being hijacked the moment you open your eyes. When you give yourself time to ease into the day, instead of jumping into the noise, you create a boundary between who you are and what the world wants from you. That gap is where peace lives. That pause is where intention grows. It's in the rituals you create, lighting a candle before journaling, playing music while you get ready, having a cup of tea before bed, not because you need it, but because it slows your heartbeat. It's in the way you prep your meals, fold your clothes, organize your space, not for aesthetics, but because order around you brings order within you. It's in those moments of stillness you carve out, not for applause, not for likes, but because your soul needs silence to reset. When you make a routine sacred, you begin to feel the difference in how you carry yourself. You're less reactive, less emotionally scattered. You don't need external chaos to validate that you're doing something. You're no longer in survival mode, jumping from one demand to the next without catching your breath. You move with clarity, not confusion. You act with purpose, not pressure. And when you fall out of it, and you will sometimes, you don't shame yourself. That's part of the rhythm too. Life changes. You get tired. You forget. The point isn't to be flawless. The point is to keep returning, to know that your routine is always there waiting to hold you when you're ready to return to yourself. It's not about control. It's about connection. Connection to your body, your breath, your thoughts, your values. And there's freedom in that. Because once you learn to create stability within, you stop chasing it from the outside. You're not at the mercy of every mood swing or text message or news alert. You're rooted. You've built a foundation strong enough to hold you. Even when the winds pick up, you start to trust yourself in a deeper way. Not because everything is perfect, because you've built something inside you that can't be shaken easily. That kind of internal consistency changes things. It gives you emotional margin, mental clarity, physical ease. It reminds you that you don't have to earn your rest. You don't have to wait for life to slow down to feel calm. You can create that calm. You can become your own reset button. You can live from a place of alignment instead of always reacting to urgency. And with each day that you return to that rhythm, even in the smallest ways, you remind yourself that stability isn't found in the world. It's something you create on purpose, again and again, inside yourself. Gratitude isn't a trend. It's not just a journal prompt or a cute quote on social media. It's a quiet shift in the way you see your life. It's not about pretending everything is okay or forcing yourself to be positive when you're struggling. It's about noticing what's still good, even when things aren't perfect. It's about choosing to pay attention to what's already working instead of letting your mind spiral into what's missing. And for many women, the habit of gratitude doesn't come easily, not because they're ungrateful, but because they've spent so much of their lives managing, fixing, and surviving that they've barely had time to pause and acknowledge what they've already come through. Gratitude brings you back to presence. It slows your breath. It softens your inner dialogue. It reminds you that while you may not be where you want to be yet, you've come a long way from where you started. And that journey matters. The strength it took to hold on, the courage it took to keep going, the softness you kept alive even when the world tried to harden you. Those things deserve recognition. Gratitude allows you to stop measuring your life by what you lack and start honoring it for what it has already held. It doesn't have to be big. It can be as simple as sunlight filtering through your window, a moment of laughter you didn't expect, a deep breath that reminded you you're still here, a quiet morning without chaos, a text from someone who thought of you, a meal that nourished your body. Gratitude isn't about extravagance, it's about awareness. It's about noticing the ordinary and letting it be enough. Because when you train your mind to see the beauty in small things, you start to feel more grounded in your daily life, less anxious, less reactive, less like you're chasing something, and more like you're living in it. And what's powerful about gratitude is that it doesn't ignore pain. It just doesn't give it all the power. You can be grieving and still be grateful. You can be in transition and still find peace in small consistencies. You can be healing and still say thank you for the parts of you that held on. Gratitude doesn't erase your struggle. It just gives it context. It reminds you that even in the tension, even in the not yet, there is still light. The habit of practicing gratitude daily doesn't have to look the same for everyone. Some women write it down. Others speak it out loud while getting ready in the morning. Some carry it in their thoughts like a quiet undercurrent that runs through their day. What matters isn't the format, it's the frequency. The more often you choose gratitude, the more it begins to rewire the way you think. You start to notice what you have instead of constantly reaching for what's next. You start to recognize the good things while they're still happening instead of missing them while looking ahead. And slowly, your relationship with your life changes. You stop expecting the outside world to validate your joy. You stop waiting for big wins to feel content. You stop overlooking the moments that make you feel connected, alive, and human. Because gratitude anchors you. It's the habit that keeps your heart open when life wants to close it. It's the perspective that helps you remember that even on hard days, something beautiful is still unfolding inside you. Not because everything is perfect, but because you chose to see it. Because you trained your eyes to notice what your heart almost forgot. Because you decided to find meaning in what you already have before chasing after what you don't. When you strip it all back, the noise, the pressure, the constant expectations, what remains is the woman you're becoming every single day. And the truth is, she's not built in a moment. She's built in the daily choices, in the small, silent shifts, in the habits no one claps for but that change everything from the inside out. These aren't just tasks to complete. They're lifelines. Anchors. Practices that bring you back to yourself when life tries to pull you away. Because you are allowed to protect your time like it matters. You are allowed to move with intention instead of urgency. You are allowed to create space for your growth, your peace, your strength, without apologizing for it. Every habit you build is a vote for the version of you that doesn't just survive, but thrives. Not for anyone else's validation, but for your own alignment, for your own healing, for your own joy. And no, you won't get it right every day. That's not the point. The power isn't in perfection, it's in presence. It's in the decision to show up for yourself even when it's hard. Even when no one sees it. Even when it would be easier to fall back into the noise. Because the more you return to these daily habits, the more you remember that you were never meant to live on autopilot. You were made to live awake, aware, aligned. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are building something sacred one choice at a time. And that is more than enough.